Today we're making a Philips Hue hanging linear light out of walnut on Nathan Builds. For this project I chose a piece of walnut that had some nice character. This is going to make it really interesting to look at, but it also makes it a bit harder to build. I'm using my track saw as it's a bit safer with the first cut given the warped nature of the board. As you can see, the wood is really hard and all my saws struggled a bit, so I had to go pretty slowly. I wasn't exactly sure the dimensions or how this was going to work going into it, so I started with one piece of wood to see how that might look and how the channel would sit in it. I cut the wood and channel down to size with my miter saw. The channel's made of aluminum, so you can cut that with a regular wood blade. Then I use CA glue to fill all of the cracks, especially this big knot on the end. I'm using a brown color, which blended in really nicely. Once I had it cut down to size, I decided it needed to be a bit larger because it still needed to be planed and it was a little bit warped, so I was a little concerned with how the channel might sit in there. So I cut another piece from the same board and planed them both down. Next I'm going to glue them up, and you can see here, especially in the next shot, that the boards are pretty warped. That's due to kind of the nature of the knots and also just it's a funky piece of wood. So I'm hoping that the glue up is going to help stabilize that. I also clamped them to this super sturdy piece of stainless steel, and I'm hoping that that, in addition to the way I'm gluing them up, is going to help straighten them out and keep them stabilized. I'm also going to be putting the channel in there and doing some other things that should help out as well. Once the glue dried, I planed it down and then I cut it down to width on my table saw. You'll see I'm taking pretty much off here, and that's because I really only needed about half an inch to an inch more on the width of the board, but the piece of wood I'm using just wasn't quite big enough, so I had to go this route. I'm going to keep the seam in the middle, so I'm taking equal amounts off either side. Then I cut it down to length on my table saw with my crosscut sled. Next, I measured out the locations that need to be hollowed out with my router. The bottom needs enough removed to hold the channel and also the diffuser, which sits above it. And then on the back, there's sections that hold some hardware for the LEDs, as well as plates that will hold to the connector that connects to the ceiling, which is aircraft cable. This project isn't really that hard, it just took a lot of time and patience, especially here with the routing. The wood's so hard that you need to take a lot of passes or you will break your bits or maybe tear up your wood. So I just took my time and made pass after pass and then ripped out the middle. As I mentioned, this top section has one side that's routed out pretty deep, and that's going to hold the LED controller and power cable that gets snaked up around through the inside of the light. You'll see more of that later. And there's the two panels that will mount to the aircraft cable. After I got most of it routed out, I used my chisel to clean up all of the edges, and I also gave the corners a bit of a chamfer for a nice little subtle look. Then I sanded everything down and got ready to attach the hardware. Put down two pieces of stainless steel plate, which are going to attach the aircraft cable to the light itself. Each plate has 3 holes in it, one in the center, which will be for the bolt that attaches to the aircraft cable, and then 2 offset on each side that get screwed into the wood. I also countersunk all the holes so that the bolts and screws sit flush. Unfortunately, the bolt that came with the aircraft cable kit still was a bit proud of the plate, so I needed to make a little bit of space for it in the light. We're using a Philips Hue LED light strip for this project, so I needed a hole on one side to feed the end of the cable around to the back in that recess that we made that's going to hold the LED controller. I used a file to clean up the metal channel after I drilled it out, and a chisel to clean up the wood hole. I decided to attach the channel with both epoxy and screws to help stabilize the wood. I'm not sure if this really made a difference, but I made the decision, so I marked out where I was going to go and pre-drilled all of the holes to prevent the wood from splitting since it's so hard. I'm using Totalboat Thixo epoxy, which I really love. I've used it on a bunch of different projects. It goes on in a nice gel-like consistency and it's really easy to work with. Once it cured, I wiped all the metal pieces down with mineral spirits to remove any oil. I pre-drilled the screw holes for the mounting brackets on the back. Then I installed the LED strip lights. Thankfully, everything fit just right. As you can see, the hole is not the prettiest thing ever, but this is going to get covered up by the diffuser, so you won't actually see it anyway, and no one's ever going to see the top. For the diffuser, I'm using a piece of frosted acrylic that I got custom cut, and I think it cost around $40. It's probably more expensive than anything but the LEDs. It fit really snugly, but I also used a little bit of epoxy to secure it in. Once that cured, I taped off the diffuser and some back sections that I didn't want finished, and I applied some oil. I installed the LED controller with double-sided tape and hot glue. I also used hot glue on the hole where the cable fed through. This probably wasn't necessary, but just in case, I used a black magic marker to black out the glue around the hole so that no light would shine in from below and project onto the ceiling. Also probably unnecessary, but I used some Loctite on the bolts that are going to be holding the cable to the base just in case. This light uses a regular outlet, so I built this box that's going to be hidden above the ceiling, and it will house an outlet through that box there. The power cable fits through the top hole, and it's just big enough to get in there, and then I'm going to caulk around so you won't actually see it. The top to the box is held on by magnets and also tension. It's really sturdy, but just in case, I added these screws, and I'm going to attach a safety cable just in case it falls and doesn't hit someone or break a glass or something like that. The top of the box will sit flush with the drywall right above my kitchen island. The light is held up with 2 aircraft cables that have hardware that can screw right into the ceiling. Luckily, there was a rafter right at the location that we needed, so we didn't have to do any anchors or anything like that. And with that, we're done. This was a really fun project, and it actually wasn't that difficult to build. It did take time and quite a bit of patience, especially because I used this piece of wood that wasn't perfect. I think it turned out really nicely. It's also held up really well. I've used this light every day for the past 3 years for at least 6 to 8 hours. I think the total cost was around $150. It's because the LED strip was pretty expensive, but if you use something cheaper, then it would bring that price down quite a lot. However, compared to store-bought versions of this that are definitely not as nice, this thing is super cheap. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next episode.